Working Christmas is a mixed bucket of feelings. You look on the rota and you see you're working Christmas and your heart does sink a little bit.
I think in the 9 years since I qualified as a doctor, I've worked 8 Christmas.
You think of the Christmas dinner that you're going to miss. You think of the friends and family who are not going to see you over Christmas.
I'm actually on call Christmas Eve, Boxing Day and New Year's night.
But then you come to work on Christmas and you see how much of a difference you can make.
I enjoy being the one, being there, helping the people in those special days.
Tears of joy you bring to a wife's eyes when you let them know that their husband survived.
I'm not going to see my son at all because my nanny is going to take him and spend the Christmas with her family. And that means that I would spend this Christmas on my own, just working in a hospital. And it would be the 3rd Christmas that my son would see.
We're never going to deny that it's hard working Christmas, but we do it for our patients because we love our patients.
7 years ago, I took an oath to do no harm. I got called to a ward to see a very sick lady. She was in her 30s. She looked very, very unwell indeed. I called my colleagues to come and help. We tried to make her better, but she got sicker and her heart stopped. And we performed CPR for an hour and it didn't work. And it was a team of 5 or 6 junior doctors all working to save this 30-year-old woman's life. And she didn't survive and she died as it turned Christmas Day. There were nurses crying on the ward. None of us really knew what to do. So we did the British thing, we went to the mess, we had a cup of tea in complete silence, and then we just got on with our job. That day, after my night shift, I went home, told my wife, packed up the car, went to my parents, and spent Christmas Day with my family. I didn't sleep. I didn't tell a single one of them about it. I didn't want to upset them. Because that's what being a doctor is.
12 years ago, I took the oath to do no harm. I come from a medical family. My grandfather was a cardiothoracic surgeon. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to do something that would mean that I would change someone's life or save a life. The other day, I was doing a trauma list and I went to speak to a 70-year-old lady who broke her hip. She was running after her grandkid and she tripped and fell over. And her daughter there was with her. And when I was talking to her and telling her about the anesthetic and what the surgery would be about, and her daughter started crying, she was so worried and so scared, and she wanted her mum to go back to normal. And I think I had tears in my eyes as well, because this is what we do on an everyday basis. Every patient is a moving, touching story, because every day when we care for someone, we care for your mother, your brother, your son, your daughter, someone of your family, and we do our best. And we do our best to make sure that that person would survive and would have the best outcome.
6 years ago, I took an oath to do no harm. A few months ago, I was working under the acute medical team, and it was about 4 in the morning. I hadn't had lunch, it was really busy, and I'd finally got a small break to, 30 minutes to have a small bit of lunch. And I was thinking about a patient that I'd seen on the acute take who had just moved onto the acute medical unit. She was an elderly lady, she had end-stage cancer. She had a horrible chest infection. She was partially blind. She was partially deaf. And I remember her feeling really scared when I saw her. So I took the moment and I said, do you know what? I can have something to eat later. I sat down next to her and I held her hand and talked to her and tried to comfort her during her time of need. And it's moments like that that make me realize how important it is to be a doctor and look after people at their worst ebb, really.
10 years ago, I took an oath to do no harm. In my first Christmas as a junior doctor, I was working on an oncology ward looking after women with breast cancer. On Christmas Eve, it was the first Christmas that I had worked, and one of our patients' dying wish was to get married to her long-term partner in front of their daughter. While she was being married in her wedding dress with her oxygen on, we readied her room with a Christmas tree and Christmas lights and had mince pies and tea ready for her when she came back from her wedding. I was very lucky that I was off work on Christmas Day, and when I came back I was looking forward to seeing her, and I arrived early to get all the paperwork ready for the ward round. And as soon as I arrived, it must have been about 7 o'clock in the morning, I was told that she had just died. And as a junior doctor, your job is to certify patients when they have passed away. And I had to go into her room and see her. And she still had her wedding dress on the back, hanging on the back of the door, and all the Christmas lights were blinking away. And it was really extremely sad. That was my first Christmas in the NHS.
7 years ago, I took an oath to do no harm. I remember when I was working in the A&E department and there was a fire that broke out in the hospital, actually in the floor above the emergency department, and I was in the middle of treating and seeing a very elderly, sick gentleman who was suffering with seizures. They were actually evacuating patients outside. They came into the resuscitation room and they wanted to take my patient outside, and I refused. And I said, "You can't take this patient, he's really unwell." And I said that if you want to move him, it has to be to a place which is safe. They said okay, but I had to go, and I refused. And I said, "I'm not going to go, I'm going to stay with him." Christmas Eve came and I was in my apron and gloves, ready to receive this priority emergency call from the ambulance. And the ambulance pulled up and out came this lady and a very unwell patient, a very unwell elderly man. And the lady came right up to me and she said, "I recognise you." And I said, I recognise you, but I'm not sure how. And she said, "You're the one. You stayed with my husband when there was a fire and you didn't leave him. And you kept him safe." Unfortunately, this man was actually dying and there wasn't much we could do for him. And on Christmas Eve, it was 10:30 at night, and I could hear them sobbing and crying on Christmas Eve, saying goodbyes to their father, to their uncle, to their husband. But what they probably didn't know, that I was on the other side of the door, leant up against the door, crying as well. And I'll never ever forget that day.
4 years ago, I took an oath to do no harm. One particularly strong memory from working Christmas was that we'd come in the morning and we'd been thrown straight into work with a gentleman who'd clotted off one of the blood vessels which supplied blood to his intestines. And all of the evidence and everything we knew in medicine was against him. He had a 95% chance of not making it through the operation or the day. So we worked together the surgeons, the anaesthetists of all grades, consultants down to foundation doctors. He was a very lovely gentleman, really, really sweet, very kind, and his family were lovely as well. We operated on him for 13.5 hours, and at the end of the operation we woke him up and let him know that it was still Christmas and wished him a Merry Christmas. And just before I left for that shift, I rang his wife at home and let her know that he'd made it through as well. And she burst into tears on the phone and called it her Christmas miracle. We'd beaten the odds and we were delighted, absolutely delighted.